Hi, public speakers. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, the real specifics about how to construct effective main points, I want to talk for a second in general about the body of your speech, about keeping the audience's attention. The first and most important thing you need to consider and do is to put yourself in the minds of the audience. They know a lot less about this topic than you. They also know a lot less about how you're composing yourself, how you're composing your thoughts about this topic. And so that means that they need, in a sense, to have their hands held through the body of the speech, which is likely where the most complex, the most convoluted ideas, the ideas that are supported by lots of pieces of evidence that have different kinds of examples to support them, are going to be developed. And so what do we mean by hand holding is to refer back to an earlier idea from the course, which is constructing a blueprint, an argumentative blueprint, a kind of signpost. So consider a few general tactics, three in specific. The first one is that you need to use signposting language through the body of your speech, especially even within particularly complicated main points. And what I mean by signposting language is you develop ideas by saying first, second, or additionally, or next. There is a risk, however, with words like next or also, is that they're not specific enough as signposting language. And so if you repeat also, also, also for different examples, sometimes the audience can get lost and not establish the relationships between the ideas that you want to see established. The second one is to use vivid description. Use vivid ideas to paint word pictures. So for instance, in your tribute speeches, let's say you're paying tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. So don't just tell your audience in your second main point that King was brave and give a couple of examples and move on. Give perhaps one particularly vivid example, let's say death threats. How many death threats did King receive? What was the content? Were they virulent? Were they angry death threats? How many a day did he receive? Did he receive them in particular cities? For instance, he may have received 15 in 2 days in the city of Memphis. Things like this will help create a vivid image of the kind of bravery King faced in the face of extreme and deadly obstacles, both to him, his colleagues, and his family members. And finally, a simple idea for really complex main points. The third strategy you should consider to keep the audience's attention and to keep them following along in your public speech, which is a one-shot deal, is internal previews or internal reviews for particularly complex or convoluted main points. Now, we always have a big global preview in the introduction telling the audience what you're about to tell them, but for some main points that may take 2 minutes or so to develop and have lots of examples, or there's complex ideas, you may need an internal review at the end or an internal preview, a quick one, at the beginning. Those are three strategies. Now let's move on to the nuts and bolts of constructing effective main points.